Hello, Hunter.
Hi,
It
Hunter. Thanks
is,
for the warm welcome. Doing very
oh,
well, thank you.
of course. I'm so glad to have you both here. Well, before we jump in, I would love to just hear from both of you a little bit about your career journey, a little bit about you, how you got to this place at Expedia, and maybe a fun fact about yourself.
Mhm.
So jump on in, whoever would like to go first.
Priyanka, you want to go first?
Sure, I can take it. So hi everyone, I'm Priyanka. Currently working as a director of software engineering in Expedia. So mine is kind of the quintessential journey, right? I started as a junior dev, came to America, born and brought up in India. I came to America to do my master's. I did my master's from San Francisco. And then, I was picked up by Expedia right after school. So I've been at Expedia for 15 years now. So a long time here. And it's a quintessential journey, right? So I joined as a junior developer and then just moved up the ladder and then transitioned from an IC so I didn't do a complete career change, but I did transition from an IC to a management role. And I can talk a little bit more later as to, why I did that and my thinking around it as well. So yeah, I moved up the ladder, went from dev to senior dev to lead to EM, and now I'm leading all of traveler supplier conversations in Expedia, and also lead the VR Verbo homeowner mobile app as well. So that's in a nutshell about me. Fun fact is I've actually learned Indian classical music for 8 years and I'm a qualified teacher. So, not many people know about that, but that's like the fun fact I like to
Put
tell
in the
everybody.
chat if you want to sign up for lessons.
There you go. Um,
Yes.
That's
but yeah,
awesome.
that's in a nutshell. And a really quick second fun fact, I was actually working in Geneva, Switzerland for almost 4 years as part of
Wow.
Expedia. So that was a fun experience as well. Got to see about 17 countries in Europe, and it was a beautiful experience. So there you go.
So
Amazing.
cool.
That's
Yeah.
super cool. And I think that transition from IC to manager is so huge. So maybe we'll get some questions on that.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Marta Howard. And I wish we were like live so I could see everyone, but like show of hands, who's actually in the same career that they got their degrees in? Not I. So and I'm like everybody's like, let me put my hand down right now. My degrees are in industrial and systems engineering. I rapidly transitioned from working in manufacturing engineering to project controls, program management. I've worked for big companies, Fortune 500, like Expedia Group. I've worked for small startups, where you do every job under the sun. I've worked for government contractors and, had security clearances. And I've been with Expedia Group now for almost 7 years. And the role that I'm in currently is as a chief of staff or chief cat herder. And what I found is that it's like the beauty of all of these experiences go into making me successful in the role that I'm in today. So would love to talk about any of those transitions or transitioning even into something new as I think about like what is my next eventual step in my career journey. Um, and so I'm trying to think of a good fun fact. And Priyanka mentioned travel, and of course we both work at a travel company, so like y'all are going to hear about travel. I'm trying to travel to as many countries as I am years old, and so I'm still striving for that. I need to like go through the Caribbean and like just like pick up a swath of like easy countries. But in the last year, I have managed to get myself to France, to Italy, and to Egypt, which was absolutely spectacular. Loved my visit to Egypt. So my next trip upcoming is to the Azores and Madeira. So got lots of hikes planned, and really excited to explore that part of Portugal that is a little bit closer to home where I am. So with that, let me turn it over to
I
Hunter and see, do we have questions already?
well, I love that. Well, I love for two people that work with a travel company are very well traveled. So that's very cool.
Surprise, surprise.
I know.
Yeah, the perks must be great. So let's jump into the topic of the career transitions. Like you said, a lot of us are in different careers than what we studied for, maybe of a different career that we were in 5 years ago. There's a lot of transitions going on in every industry right now. So I'm curious, what do you two think of, what are some reasons that people might look for career transitions, whether it's pursuing new personal growth or
Sure.
responding to changes in the industry, which we're seeing a lot of right now, and maybe something else?
Yeah, I think there's two big instigators, you and not you, right? So some
Mm,
people might be in the not you category where they got like, they've been selected to have a transition, maybe they
mhm.
weren't thinking they were going to have one. And so that's a real pivot point. And then there are points in your career, like Priyanka was talking about, where you need to think about what's next for me. How do I grow? How do I evolve?
Right.
You talked a little bit about in the intro about like that self-reflection. And in both cases, where it's a, hey, I chose a transition or I didn't choose a transition, so important to think about what do you want next. And often when you're in those moments of change or contemplating change, it really can free your mind into seeing possibilities that you didn't think existed or you didn't really contemplate before because you were comfortable in your, where you were
Right.
in that moment. And so
Yeah.
it's like that moment when you're like, oh, I can get uncomfortable. I can think about like totally different ideas, but it's so important to think about what you want most of all in this transition.
Yeah, I think completely echo that what Martha just said. I would even categorize it a little further. So in the you category, right? It's like Martha mentioned, it's self-reflection, it's self-awareness, right? So you could want new challenges, you could want, you're following a new passion, or you want to basically you're just dissatisfied with the current role, right? I mean, there are like multiple things that go into the you category. And I think the core concept in there is being self-aware, right? Like you should know what you want in that time, in that frame of mind, in that time in your life, right? And then there's external factors as well, right? It could be, the company is going through something. So, I think she summarized it very well in those two categories, like you and not you. And then there's a bunch of other categories under them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so helpful to put those in those two buckets there, because sometimes there are things that just are outside of our control, right? Like
Yep.
things
Mhm.
just happen and we're just going to do the best we can, and
We have the opportunity for something new.
that's
That's what
right.
that
That's
means
right.
when it's in the not you category.
Yeah, yeah, to really see something as an opportunity and as a learning experience as opposed
Mhm.
to the end of days, right? It's like, nope, this is just a transition. We can get through this.
Yep.
This is natural. It's okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I had this talk yesterday that was so lovely about imposter syndrome. And
Mm,
the speaker was talking about how one of the big cues of imposter syndrome is waiting, right? It's like waiting for our turn, waiting to be called on, waiting to be promoted, right? And that makes me think about the other bucket of like, what do we want next for our
Right.
career, like the
right.
two of you were just saying. And that gives us agency, right? To be like proactive of what we want to do.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
And so
gives you
powerful.
more. Yeah,
Go ahead.
it's more control, right? In a way, you are setting your own destiny, right? And I keep, one of the things I tell my mentees at here at work as well is if you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it, So,
Mm,
try
Yeah.
your best to, if you want to succeed. And it goes back to doing self-reflection, self-awareness, right? So, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And in that journey of like self-reflection, I find, sometimes you can get stuck. Sometimes you can
Hmm.
be like, I don't know what role I want next. I mean, it's like asking like a 5-year-old, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you're like, I don't know, a veterinarian, a firefighter, and like, you ask me 6 months later and it changes. You don't have to be locked into the idea of like, gosh, I've always been this kind of person and I must always look for this kind of role. Think about what you have learned in terms of your skills and
Right.
talk about your next role in terms of what skills you want to grow or what skills you want to flex, because that allows, someone, if you're networking or if you're having a conversation with someone else or you're having a conversation with a recruiter, if you're having a conversation with your boss, even that allows them, if you're talking skills, that allows them to imagine roles that you maybe hadn't even thought of. And so it allows them to put you into places that you didn't even like, well, I didn't know the name for that, but those are the things I love to do. Those are the skills that I want to grow. And those are the experiences that I want to have next. So I love talking about, as you're thinking about transitions, talk about it in terms of what skills you want instead of, I want this title, because that can really limit you.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like you said, there's so many jobs that maybe I don't know the name of that job, but I know what
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
good at, right?
Yeah.
There's constantly
Yeah.
new job titles coming up. You're like, what is that even? But then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm actually might be great at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
So what are ways that that you two would recommend? You mentioned Priyanka as well that you have mentees. Um, how do you guide them in navigating career transition successfully?
Yeah, so I think first off, people get overwhelmed. Like, where do I start? So I feel like having a mentor a relationship is super crucial. I think just having someone to bounce off ideas, talk to people, networking, that kind of helps people set themselves up for a successful, career transition. So definitely that's one of the pathways to succeed in your career transition, right? Second thing I tell my mentees is experiment, right? Try it out. Say if so, for example, IC to manager, right? Many people are like, oh well, I don't know whether I'm going to like that role. I'm not a people person. And here at Expedia in my org, we encourage the culture of rotations, right? So my response to them is, hey, try it out for 6 months. And if it's not for you, you'll know immediately, right? So there's always, you can go back to the IC role. It shouldn't be that difficult of a transition. So something like doing a POC, right? We do a proof of concept in engineering, right? So similar to that, just experiment with the idea, see if you like it, research on it, right? That's another thing I tell my mentees. I'm like, don't go blindly into it, right? Research about what you're transitioning into. And to Marta's point earlier, the skills, right? So find
Mhm.
something you can transition into that will be beneficial with your skills, right? Will set you up for success. So that's kind of the first, thing I always tell my mentees, that try to set yourself up for success with these direction, right? That okay, I have X skills and this skill will probably work well in the career I want to transition to, so I'll try it out. And sometimes the career you want to transition into seems like a completely different thing, right? Like you said, there are new job titles coming every day. But when you research, you realize, okay, I have most of the skills required for this, so it may not be that difficult. So these are the couple of things I navigate my mentees with, right? So like experimenting, research, self-awareness, knowing your skills, knowing your true core values, and then seek support from your mentors and other professionals, right? Networking, there's
Yeah.
always benefit in going to networking events, and I'll admit, I used to not be good at it, but I think there is tremendous things you can learn from networking events, right? Just going and talking to people, it keeps you up to date with what's going on in the industry
Mm.
as well. So yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people out there thinking like, shoot, I don't have a mentor.
Yeah.
So one, you can always ask someone to be your mentor. It's very flattering for that person to receive that
Yes, it is.
request. So you can,
Yeah.
it's pretty easy to go acquire a mentor, actually, and, be specific about what goals you want to accomplish with that mentor. But at various points in my career, have found myself without a specific mentor, ongoing mentor relationship. And I like to go to, when I'm making a transition or thinking about a transition, I like to go to what I call my wise counsel. And it's going back to, former leaders that I've worked with, friends who I admire for their skill in a particular area. Like, I have one or two friends who are like, oh my gosh, this person's an excellent manager. And I know because we've had management conversations, like, man, if I'm in a sticky point, or if I want to talk to this person, like, how can they maybe coach me? So I have kind of, a whole set of people who are, Franco talked about like going out and meeting new people. Don't forget, you have a whole bunch of people that you already know. Call them
Yep.
up,
Mm.
send them a LinkedIn message, and consider them part of your wise council of people that you might want to converse with about, potential transitions, and say, like, float some ideas, like Priyanka was saying. Like, well, what do you think about this? I really want to grow this skill. Where might that be applicable? Or how could I do more of that? Or, if I want to stay in my current role, but I also want to grow, how do I do that? And so I think you probably already have a wealth of mentorship type people, people that you've already got, valuable people in your network who you consider to be very knowledgeable. Reach out to that person and be like, hey, I am thinking about this transition, and get their thoughts.
That is so wise. It's so easy to think about like the what's next in the future. I got to find the right people, but I love to take
Mhm.
stock and look back at all of these amazing people that have helped me along the way. Maybe I already have a mentor just waiting for me that I haven't called up or sent a message to.
Yeah.
So we're getting some great questions in from the chat too. So I would love to uh, pencil in some of these. One of our questions is, do they have any challenges? Okay, so anyone from the panel, do you have any challenges or failures or redirections that you've encountered that helped you get more clarity in your career journey?
Mm.
Mm,
Great question.
that is a
Yeah.
great question. So I have an example. I won't say it's a failure, but I will say it's a challenge. Or I guess it was again going back to being self-aware. So I'll talk about my journey, right? Going from an IC to a management role. So I remember I was, a senior software dev and, leading these projects and, doing the coding. And then there came an opportunity for me. So it was like a challenge to me to lead a vendor team, right? It wasn't too many vendors, it was just two vendors. But I think that I took it on as a challenge. I was nervous, right? Moving from the IC role, doing the IC role and leading a small vendor pod is going to be challenging at that point in my career, right? Because I had no experience. But I took that on, and I think that's pivotal for me when I realized that I am actually a people manager. I'm a people person. I like to mentor people. I get the satisfaction from growing people, right, and helping them. And I think that's when I realized maybe management is the thing for me. And I do like being technical as well. And I found the sweet spot over there, right? I was like, okay, great. I can be in architectural discussions and still not be coding every day, but still managing people as well, right? So I think again, for me, to this question, it goes back to being self-aware and self-reflection
Mhm.
and kind of figuring out, okay, this is what I really want to do, and I like being with people and growing people. So I think this is my path ahead. Maybe at that point, if I would have turned into complete management, who knows, I would, there is a possibility of failure as well, but in my case it worked out well for me, right? So maybe that answers the question. I'm not sure. I would love to hear Martha's thoughts as well, but that's
Yeah,
kind of
I,
experience.
I think self-reflection is key, but I think you have to get to that point. You have to get to your
Right.
headspace. We talked about the importance of mental health here. So I've definitely had challenges working for small startups. Hey, guess what? Sometimes they lay off the whole staff. And that is not fun. And it can be really terrifying if you've never experienced that before. If you've been laid off for the first time, it's actually a skill. I had an old
Hmm.
coworker who worked in marketing, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I can tell when it's going to happen because she liked working for startups." She's like, "I can tell when it's happened." She's like, "I packed my layoff bag today, so that I'm ready to pick up all my things from my desk and like move on to my next thing." It was because she knew how to do it. She knew
Hmm.
I need to, like, when is my health insurance ending? I'm going to pick up all my prescriptions. She knew I'm going to make sure my LinkedIn is updated. I'm going to, and what I learned from that challenge and that experience, and from working with that person who had that experience a lot of times, I always update my resume every 6 months. Maybe there's some people who are, I know a lot of folks we're talking to are in transition right now. So I bet your resume looks darn good right now. Good for you. I'll give you some high fives for that. But maybe there's some of you who are thinking about a transition, and maybe you've been like me or Priyanka, and you've been with a company for a while. There is nothing worse than having to reconstruct like the last 5 years of your professional
Yep.
career when you're in a moment of like, oh my gosh. And so, what I would say is, one, update your resume. Even if you do a terrible update to your resume, put the bullets in and be like, what the heck did I do in the last 6 months? You might edit those out later. It doesn't matter if it goes over 2 pages.
Hmm.
It's okay. Put some terrible bullets in of what I did for the past 6 months and just keep piling those in And those will get refined as you make updates. So that's one of the things is it's a skill to face a challenge. So one, when you receive a challenge, like say you've gotten laid off, or say you have to transition to a new role that you're like, well, I didn't choose that, is to one, take stock in yourself and take a moment and realize that this is you're probably getting an emotional reaction, right? And so take time for that, allow that to happen, and then be like, what do I need to do progressively to move myself out of this? And how do I prepare myself the next time that this challenge might confront me? What can I do differently? So that's what I would say about challenges. We're all going to have them.
Yep. Yeah.
So true. I love your friend that had the go bag for the
Yeah,
layoffs. That's just
she's like,
so
I think
great.
she had been laid off like over 30 times. She's like, oh, I know
Oh my
that's true.
gosh.
But
Yeah.
she loved
It's
working
just,
at startups. And so she's like, no, I got
yeah,
this.
I got this. Yeah, we'll talk about, like you
Yeah,
said, that's a skill for her at that
it's
point,
a
right?
skill for her. Yes. Yeah. And addressing challenges and facing them head on can be a skill for you too. Yep.
Yeah. How often do we see in a job description to be nimble and flexible? I think that's a
Yeah.
great
Right.
example.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I got this.
Yeah. So we're talking a lot about self-reflection. I would love to hear how the two of you do that and how you suggest to mentees that they do that. It's a very personal experience, right? So there's a lot of different ways of doing
Yeah.
it. What ways do you two tap into?
So there are
You know,
multiple
for
ways. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Marta.
no, go ahead, Priyanka. Take it.
Yeah, no, so like you said, it's a very personal way of doing things. Some people keep it in their head and, like to talk about it, I
Mhm.
would say just even if you can take a few, like that's what I do. Like I don't write a journal or anything, but I know people who write a journal to self-reflect and, kind of go through their goals and stuff like that. But for me, I make a conscious effort to think about my goals periodically, right? I think that's important, just to create that space, create the time, take the time to think about it, examine your thoughts, your emotions. And usually you can tell when you know, you're getting too irritated sometimes in conversations, or you're at a stage in life where you're finding yourself getting frustrated in meetings, right? That's kind of when I take that as a cue to just step back and think what's going on, and reflect, right, on the experiences, learn from the interactions, learn from the achievements, learn from successes, from failures, right? So that's how I do it. It's a very mental thing for me. But I know, some people writing works better for them. So I do like the idea of maintaining a journal as well. And just kind of, you don't have to write it every day, but just like I said, pin down your thoughts when you see yourself changing, in situations. So that's how I do it. I'm not sure if that helps, but yeah.
I'm going to give you two tactical things really quickly because I know we have other questions to get to. One, 7 whys. Ask yourself why 7 times in a row. Keep diving in. That's a very tactical tool. You see it used all over the place. That's something you can use. And then if I put my coaching hat on, another powerful question that you can ask yourself is what's on your mind?
Mm,
And start from there and just explore.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just to
start
tag
with your
on
why.
there. Exactly. There's a book, Start With Why. It's a really,
I'm
really
actually
good book,
reading it right now. I never
Okay.
had. Yeah,
Yeah.
Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, everyone
Yeah.
talks about the
Simon Sinek's
why. I need to
fantastic.
finally read
Yeah.
this. It's so good.
Yeah.
And it holds up.
Yeah.
It's from 2009 and it still holds up.
It still holds up. I
Plus
mean,
one.
honestly, that's what it is. Start with the why, figure out your
Yeah.
Start
goals
with the
and then
why.
execute it, right? Like that's what it
Mhm.
is. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then I just looked up too, I guess he wrote a follow-up, like practical, like how to find your why pamphlet kind
Yeah.
of thing in like
Mhm.
2017 or something. So if people want some extra homework, extra reading, they can do that.
Yep.
Well, we only have a couple of minutes left, and we have more questions from the chat and more questions that I was hoping to get to too. We're not going to get to all of them. I apologize, friends that are writing your great questions. Please keep them up throughout the day. Um, and in these last couple of minutes, I would love to hear about what are some ways that Expedia Group helps employees internally with career transitions.
Yeah, well, I'm sitting here with this banner behind me intentionally because I thought you might get to this question, but it's see right here in the corner. This is our well group, which is
Mm,
our women's business group at Expedia. So one, we provide the space to find like-minded people in the company, and I know that there were some questions about like, oh, how do I find a mentor? This is a great group to ask someone to help mentor you, especially if you're early or mid in your career. There will probably, there's probably a business group inside your community or your work. This is a great way to do that. The
mm.
other thing that Expedia does is we actually have a whole career site where you can like, go in, you can
Yeah.
take a little quiz, and you can actually explore like what opportunities do I have if I talk about my skills? What other roles does Expedia have? So there's lots of great tools that the company provides to help with transitions.
Yeah, I
Amazing.
think, yeah, and one other thing I would quickly add is just an open culture of continuous learning. Expedia has been very
Mhm.
good at promoting, learning, innovation. They keep updating the career site, like Martha just said. So, and then, in my org specifically, rotations, right? I think we really encourage the growth of the people themselves. So, if you want to change your career, we encourage the rotations to, go try it out in other teams and kind of enable that growth for the person. So yeah.
I also tag in there too is you can be even more proactive about that because we have an open career market. So if there's a role open and you're
Yep.
like, I kind of want to do that, you can apply. You don't have to ask your manager for permission.
Yep.
If you're like, I'm gonna go after that, again, it's filling your cup and what you need to do in your career. You have the opportunity to do that.
I love that. I love that. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been so wonderful. This time just flew by.
It
How
did.
can folks keep the conversation going? Because there's so many more questions. What's the best way to reach out? Is LinkedIn? How do you like to be contacted by
Yeah.
maybe a future mentee? Who knows? Maybe they'll ask
Yeah.
you.
Yes. Yeah. LinkedIn is a great way to find me for sure. Marta with two T's will pop up in the search.
Yeah, same here. Priyanka Doltani, LinkedIn would be a great place. I'd be happy to help anybody answer any more questions. So,
Amazing. Priyanka, Marta, thank you so much for the time today. I hope we get to do this again. This was absolutely delightful.
all right. Thank you so
Fantastic.
much.
Have a
Yeah.
great day, everybody. Cheers.
Bye.
Take care now.